feelings of, or not feelings, but you're seeing how you're not as accepted within the gay community, being somebody who's non-binary, as much as you might have thought you would be?
Absolutely. I find that there are a number of issues in the gay community. I think it's very unfortunate that many of our people, well, supposedly my people, they walk out into the world feeling like there are so many things that are off the table for them um, because of their sexual orientation. And I think that comes from not being accepted, rejected, and thrown out, and just not nurtured by your family. I saw an experiment once. They were doing on monkeys, and what they were doing was they were depriving the monkeys of the mother's attention. Which most of us who are used to that. We have family that love us and nurture us and raise us to be the best and do the best that we can, regardless of the tools that they may or may not have had in their own lives to excel and be successful. And, maybe they didn't feel inspired, but there are so many people who didn't have that. They were rejected, and in the end, it makes them resent pretty much anyone that's like them. My family loved me, and I never felt that I was separated or put in a different place. In my family, I was the oldest son, simply put. Uh, Regardless of how feminine I seemed to be, I was always respected and nurtured as a man. My mom always said to me, "You're my oldest son, my good son." And that sent me out into the world already prepared. I felt like I had a purpose, like I'm worth, I have a duty to bring that back to my own family. And so, I started a dialogue, at one point in my life where I've got to share some of this passion in me. And when I went to the gay community and I tried to share some of my thoughts and views, and we can always do better. They're non-accepting of that. People are uncomfortable with change. Change is not always an easy thing. Some of the things that we tell ourselves we want, or we feel like I want this, I want that. We're not always comfortable with the legwork that it takes to get there. I can recall a time in my life when I was afraid of who I was. I said, wow, am I going to walk into this room and before these people even see or understand or feel or taste or smell who and what I am, are they going to see me and dismiss me based on what's in front of them, distracted by whether I am a man or whether I am a woman or what my sexual preference is, instead of communicating with me and connecting with what connections or networking I may potentially have to offer them, or maybe we can do something for one another and excel to an entirely different level. That is basically canceled before it happens. Unfortunately, I'm fine when I'm dealing with my own people, and it amazes me because the gay culture here in Baltimore City, again, like I was saying earlier, and I think I got away from that, you're not expected to be successful. There are a lot of things that are outside of the norm in the heterosexual world. I've seen it's because I'm feminine or I appear to be womanly, I just tell myself automatically, I cannot walk out into the world and get a job because of this, which is far from the truth. No one's going to accept me, when the reality is I'm not accepting myself because I wasn't accepted by my mom, who probably did not accept herself. That's why she was unable to accept me. And I cut off my own water. I walk out there and I fall victim to the world, and I thrive off of whatever is out there for me to survive, which is probably not a good thing, in the culture of the gay culture, or there's prostitution, like that's the go-to thing, it just blows my mind, but only because that wasn't how I lived. I didn't live in the closet, so to speak. I can recall just being a kid and hearing conversation in the background coming from the adults, my uncles, my mom and my uncle arguing about me. And my uncle says to my mom, Valerie, that, he's gonna be sweet, and all this other stuff. And so, it was something that was already there. And although my mother argued with my uncle about that, she did not ridicule and chastise me because of how I was. Again, I was just a kid, and they could see something that was right there. But most of us don't have that liberty. We're forced out into the world, and the world is sucking everything out of a person before they even are able to tap into whatever it is that their potential may be. Which, with the gay people, we're responsible for everything. If you think about it, there's music and theater, there's everything that is art, entertainment, and beauty essentially comes out of us, but in the world, we are our own worst enemy. Believe me, the gay culture exploits its own people more than anyone else, more than heterosexuals, more than the professional or working world. They basically never get to experience many of our people who are so talented, because our own culture and our own thoughts block us from whatever that opportunity is. Imagine me standing on the outside of that door, and I'm proud of who I am, but some of us don't have that liberty. I'm standing out that door and I'm eager to get inside, and there's an opportunity. But imagine, being bred in a place where that opportunity is taken away from you because you're standing on the outside of that door and you're looking for me. You want me here, but there's something inside of me that says I better not go in there. This is not going to go over well, and how can that be when this is everything? This is the hot topic, but this is also what we're predisposed to. And there are so many of us here in Baltimore City that are just lost as a result of it. There's the drugs, the prostitution, the lack of respect for ourselves, so no one makes the attempt to respect you if you're not going to respect yourself. So, I've encountered a number of situations where I had to come in and say, hey, listen, this is who I am, and I'm not that person. You've never encountered me, but let me show you what I'm about. This is my input. This is my feeling, how I feel about this situation, period. And I don't need your opinion. I don't need you to accept it. I just need you to respect me as a person. Respect what I have to bring to this situation, whatever the situation is. If you're distracted by whatever it is that you see, I think based on whatever the circumstances are, then that is what should take priority. Case in point, this is who I am and how I live. But when I walk out into the professional world every day, my thing is I'm wearing a suit and tie. It's completely out of my box. But in order to be respected in the world that I want to be successful in, I find that if I am not dressed that way, then the service or function that I'm there to provide may go to the back burner, because these officials who need my service that I'm really good at are distracted by my sexuality, which has no relevancy in there in that time and place. I'm not sleeping with anyone here. That's the furthest thing from my mind. It's the furthest thing from yours, I would certainly hope and assume, but it controls everything. So, in order to bring balance, I have to basically adapt to the working world because this is what is expected out of business. And if I want to be successful, then, that is what's more important. It's not for me to just force who I am on all of my clients because I have to take accountability for what I'm doing. It may not be right that they're going to think or feel this way, but if I know that's what's going to happen, then it's up to me to make a plan to offset that situation or level the field and bring it to where it should be.
It's interesting as I'm listening to you talk. So first to start off, I think you are the first non-binary person I have met. Um, I worked at an organization that had a couple people that self-identified as non-binary, but it was just passing conversation. Um, and one of the things that I noticed is people's aversion to um, change, like you said. People's aversion to change is the amount of energy it's going to take them to change. So it takes me. I remember when I first started my job, one of the people self-identified as they, and I never heard that before. I went to a very progressive school when I was in high school, but at that point in time, there were no they. There were none. There were no theys that thought wasn't even popular. It may have existed, maybe in some small portions of society, but it wasn't like how it is now, where um, people have heard these different terms. Um, and it took a lot for me to remember to not say her, because to me, this person looked like a girl. But I also understood my role in the organization, and there needed to be a certain level of professionalism and respect. And if this person is saying to me, hey, this is how I self-identify, i.e., if their name, it was the same thing with their name. The person's name was, let's say, making up a name. Person's name was John, but their middle name was Tim. They preferred to be called Tim, but I decided to call them John every time I saw them. That's going to rub somebody the wrong way. Something as simple as that. Um, and so what I think you have here is people are conditioned for the 25 years, 26 years I've been alive. I've only used the terms she and he. And if I use they, it's for a group of people. So for me being on the quote unquote outside of, I don't identify as non-binary, I'm a heterosexual male. I'm in my brain, every time I see this person, I have to think, okay, it's a they, not a her, not a she. Literally every single time, because I've never done that before. It's not an easy thing. It took me, I don't even know, like a year, and I still would mess up sometimes, and I feel bad because I didn't want to offend that person. I wasn't particularly close to this person. I wasn't an enemy with this person, but I wanted to provide that person with the level of respect I feel like they deserved as a human being, like you said. And another thing I will say is, well, as you're talking, as I'm listening, I also can, in some ways, identify or not relate, but I have been in situations in which I understood that once I enter a room, I'm going to be viewed a certain way because of how I look, not because of my intelligence, my speech, my history, my job, right? Whatever. I could have worked for the president of the United States. It didn't matter. Um, People were going to judge me based on appearances. And it's a very difficult thing with humans to get people to not judge by appearances, because I personally believe that that's a large part of how we navigate the world is through what we see. Right? It's like a dark alley. Right? You might look down a dark alley. Most people go, I ain't gonna go down the alley. It could be nothing down the alley. 9 times out of 10, it's probably nothing down the alley because it's dark and nobody see. But there's something in our mind that says dark alley, don't go down there. I think that people naturally are wired to, um, by virtue of biology, by virtue of whatever, and this is all people across all spectrums, look at something and try to think of anything that looked like that as to allow them to figure out how they behave in the situation, right? It's like if you look into a room, you're not, you open a door, let's say you dress down, and you open a door, you come to a meeting, like a business meeting or whatever, you look into a door and they say, oh, you can wear whatever, and you open that door and everybody's wearing suits, and you wearing a t-shirt, you're gonna close that door, you're gonna go home, or you're gonna figure out something. 99% of people would do that. Not many people would walk into that room with a t-shirt on because you feel left out. You feel out of the loop. And so what we see is a way of how a lot of people navigate the world. So for me not being someone who self-identifies as non-binary or gay or trans or whatever, these are new terms for me from personal experience. And then on top of that, I now have to figure out how to navigate with someone who's never looked like that. And while I agree with you, as we both know, it isn't important. As I know, my skin tone, my size, my whatever has nothing to do with anything I've ever done. I don't play football. I don't whatever it is that people think, but that's how people associate me. They see, you look like all these other people. And the thing that's similar about all these other people is they did this thing, whether it's they robbed a bank or they in a gang or whatever. So I think that is a battle that everyone, and I mean I say everyone, people in marginalized groups, people in minority groups are constantly going to have to fight that battle in terms of getting into spaces and saying, maybe through their actions, I don't fit whatever it is, like you said. I don't fit whatever it is that you think I am. And what I think happens, at least for me, what happens is people are very uncomfortable, like you said, with change. It's like there's nothing in the history of mankind that has ever went smoothly when it came to change. When cars were first invented, the roads were not built so that cars could drive on them. So the car companies had to buy up these railroads and these streets and make them paved in order for, and that took X amount of years, X amount of money, and it had to make sense for a whole bunch of people to get rich off of.
Yes, the cars were falling
apart.
The people on the horses said it would never work.
Yeah, there's no seat belts. Like something as simple as cars that we drive and take for granted every single day took who knows how much money and time and effort and revision and figuring it out in new versions or whatever just to get to a car. We're like, this is just a car. This ain't nothing but a regular. I got a video on YouTube to teach me how to do this. So I think that because I think it's like there's a duality that exists. I think that change within individuals. I think there's two different types of changes. I think there are like systematic changes, and I think there's like cosmetic changes. So like as a person, my cosmetic change was saying they instead of she and he. A systematic change may be seeing people, maybe not assuming that someone is a he or a she when I see them. Maybe that's a systematic change. That's going to take 5-10 years maybe. Maybe longer, 20 years, or it may never happen. I may die and never have ever done that because of whatever. I don't know, whatever reason, exposure, the amount of people that I'm around, whatever. So I think that there's like this middle ground of expectation on both ends of people. And what I will say from people that I've talked to, one of the things, and this is not even specific to trans people, this is specific to any minority, period. One of the things that people feel is, oh, well, the world doesn't revolve around you. Why does it matter? Why do you care? Everybody's just doing their own thing, whatever. And because I'm a dark-skinned, relatively large African-American male, I know that that's not reality. You can think all you want that you deserve and exist in whatever it is that you want. But if people have the ability to stop that from happening and make those decisions without you having a say in it, they can and they will. And if they want to kill you, they can kill you. And so there's this duality of where people think that, oh, well, just do whatever. So my question is to you, what is, I had multiple questions while you're talking. So my first question is, was there a moment, you mentioned that you were younger, and your family had already noticed that you were feminine or what have you, or exhibited behaviors that are associated more with a classic, what people perceive to be a woman or a woman,
or at the time,
girl,
gay,
or okay, yeah.
There were some gay tendencies clearly that they noticed.
Okay. And that was their only point of reference for that behavior. Their only point of reference is saying he's doing stuff that looks like this. What else would they call it? So was there a point that you realized within yourself that you were that you identified as neither male or female, but you identified as non-binary? And I'm curious to know, or were there, like now that you're older, were there thoughts in your mind when you were younger that you kind of like knew that you were, or thought that you were different or whatever? Because like I said, I'm not non-binary, I'm not gay or whatever. So I just thought I was whoever I was, and my sexuality is accepted. But I have other choices that aren't accepted. And I have had moments in which I've thought about making a decision for years before I made the decision, because I thought I knew how other people would accept it. But those decisions weren't necessarily as serious as your sexuality or how you present yourself or how you identify or want people to not identify you as. So I'm curious to know, was there a point in which you said, okay, I this is not me. I'm not this. I'm not this. Did you always know that you weren't? And you said that your mom was accepting, and your grandmother. You mentioned your grandmother.
Well, no, not my grandmother.
Okay.
My uncle.
Your uncle.
God rest his soul, he's been dead for a long time.
Yeah.
But that was just a conversation that I remember them having, and I couldn't have been any more than 6 or 7 years old when I overheard that. But I knew early on that I was different from other boys of my age. I felt this. I felt different. I felt attracted to the other sex. And younger in my life, when I was younger, I just believe. Like you said, because of what was going on systematically in the world, okay, well, I'm gay, So, all right, I'm supposed to be attracted to men, but I know my family, even though I was never in the closet, I overheard my mom and my uncle arguing about my sexuality. I was never... I wasn't shunned, I wasn't chastised for being feminine. So, I felt that it was okay, even though I was a kid, going into adolescence, I knew that there was something inside of me that said, okay, this is who you are, and your family is not treating you the way other people's families are treating them in this situation. But there is a balance, I can't just walk out there and put all of this stuff on the table, I have to keep some of these things in. And I realized after I had lost, going into adulthood, and I lost a few people who were close to me, I think looking at mortality made me, I had an epiphany, well, really it wasn't, because it had been there for quite some time. When I was younger, coming into adolescence, I always had what I thought was an admiration for women. I had gay people that were around me in my life who would say, oh, I don't like women, or, I'm not attracted to women, and oh, why are you doing that? And they had these names for women, and me coming from a single mom, a woman is the most powerful thing in the world. So naturally, even though I had these feelings toward the same sex, I've always had feelings inside of me, passion for a woman. And, I have very strong views about having children and leaving a legacy. I feel that my own personal opinion, and I know people have a lot of opinions about this. I feel that it's a waste of my life if I come here and I leave and there's no one left behind with my blood running through their veins. That cannot be, but I've got so many people, particularly the gay people that are standing behind me like, oh my God, what do you do? You're not supposed to have kids, or, you're not supposed to be with a woman. And I'm like, wow, you all have been scrutinized and cut down all your life, and here you are telling me what I cannot have, and this is what I want, But after experiencing those losses, I think that was my epiphany. I can do what I want to do, and either you're going to accept me or you're not. I've only got one life to live. One day they're going to throw dirt in my face. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. I've been through some bad times in my life. Adversity doesn't scare me. I mean, if I have to deal with something that's tremendous, then I have to deal. In my experience, in dealing with something that's really bad, there's something really good, certainly, to come out of that. But I think it was, it was just mortality. I love family, and that's something that I have to have. I'm entitled to that. I need it. And that was the defining moment. I think I was maybe 20. No, I was younger than that. I was 20. I was 18, and I was in a situation where I was in a relationship with a woman, an older woman. And
at this point, did you identify as gay, or were you?
Well, yes, I was gay, but I thought I was hiding that from that woman, but she saw that. And so, early on in my life, I had experiences with women that were comfortable with both sides of my sexuality, which is another anomaly that doesn't normally happen. Yeah, but today, coming back forward, I just want to skip from that point and come forward. I have had a lot of experience. I've lived my life all around women, being raised by a single mother. Now I work in marketing and advertising, but before that, I was a very well-known hairstylist. So, I was kind of groomed by them, and they exposed a lot of things to me that other people, particularly other men, would not hear. And I was surprised to hear that there is a whole culture of women, a whole genre of them, that are attracted, they have alternative attractions, For instance, I had older clients. This woman by the name of Bernice, God rest her soul, she's gone now, but she was a phenomenal woman. But guess what? She was turned on by gay porn, which blew my mind. And then learning that from her, that kind of opened the door. And these women were kind of saying, oh yeah, that's sexy, that turns me on. And I'm supposed to be gay. And I'm like, oh, what the hell? That's just me. But, I learned early, I guess, from not having to be in the closet, to always be upfront and tell the truth. So I come to the table with everything I am, and I find that when I do that, it's not always easy, but people accept me, even if it's a struggle in the beginning. Ultimately, they learned this person is an asset. Ray's a value. Ray is decent, Ray is kind, Ray's outgoing, Ray's innovative, Ray is all these things, and we would be fools. How could I ever have been distracted by this, which is nothing? And there's so much more there that he has to bring to the table. But now, when I step out into the world, my head's held high. And I notice, even though I have all these things going on, the higher my head is held, that in itself has the potential to distract whomever or whatever from just this non-binary thing, this man and women situation going on. There's a whole lot more, you know. Do you want to know why I'm so confident? This is what I have to share with you. And that sometimes is the tool that I use. I see what you're looking at, but that's not what I see. I've got something to show you. And with my experience, now I'm given the chance. I know how to walk into a room and command the attention in the room and put it where it should be versus where it shouldn't.
So, a couple questions. For you, do you ever think about, 10, 15 years ago, I remember when I was in school, there are a couple of boys that came out of the closet at my high school, and we had this big wave of learning about homosexuality, what that means, how should you treat someone, because we were in high school, like what are the do's and don'ts, don't be mean, don't bully people, that type of stuff. And I remember I was in a class, and at that point, and you might remember this, there was this big look for the gay gene. There was this big sort of like push and search for the gene that would prove that you are more likely to be gay or more likely to be whatever. Because at certain points, people say testosterone, estrogen, these are levels. Some men are born with more estrogen than other men born with, etc. Right? So there's already a spectrum in terms of chemical stuff. That's a fact, and that determines behavior. People who have more testosterone tend to be physically look differently, and then also have behaviors that people can say, okay, this person is a higher testosterone, to the point where some people who don't have those levels of testosterone will try to mimic those behaviors so that other people will think that they have those levels of testosterone and virility or whatever it is. So I remember at that point there was these like scientific magazines had this stuff, whatever, and I was raised. My family's Christian, so I was raised Christian. I was raised. I'll just tell you straight up. So I was raised in a household that, according to the Bible, believed that homosexuality was wrong. But at the same time, there were people that I lived in the same house with that were homosexual, and that my family didn't treat mean, was not like, I didn't even know that they were until I got older. And I asked my mom, she said, yeah, we knew that the whole time. You needed somewhere to stay. This person stayed at my grandmother's house. So I've always had this mental duality, not duality, but mental thing of, like you're saying, it's about how you treat people. There's a whole bunch of stuff that people will never agree on in this world. There are certain cultures that, according to their culture, it is right for them to be able to marry a 13 or 14-year-old girl. It is right for a young boy to be able to get married. There are certain cultures that believe that when a boy is 13, 12, he's a man. To another culture, you out of your mind. You're crazy. Like that, he's not. Of course he's not. He's got to be 21 and not fully developed or whatever, right? Whatever the case may be. So if we know that this disparity and discrepancy exists before we even get to sexuality and preferences, just specifically with heterosexual behaviors, and that people don't even agree on that, don't even agree on what that means. I think that people, in my opinion, waste a lot of energy and time expressing their anger or their disdain or their feelings towards somebody else's personal choices.
Right. What could you have done with that energy or potentially learned?
Yeah, and I've always, I never, I've never cared. I've literally never cared. I have had situations in which um, I was assaulted by, when I was a kid, by a boy that later became gay. So I had certain, like when I was like 3 or 4, in like first grade or something like that. Like I don't know if he thought I was gay. I don't know if he was figuring out whatever he was figuring out. But I remember that being a thing that stuck with me, and that definitely created an aversion there, as it would with anybody. But other than that specific situation, I never had this thing of like, I hate gay people. I hate whatever. I don't. I know that people do a whole lot of things. Like you said, when you had that inside scoop on the ladies at the salon, you realized that they weren't the normal women that you might have thought. They weren't normal older women. And somebody might look at them and say, "Oh, this is a regular old lady or regular."
I learned from those old women, that it wasn't just the old women. There were women.
Yeah. So yeah.
Like there's
The whole world.
right,
The whole world out
right,
there.
absolutely. And right now, and I saw that growing up. I saw women be nothing but strong. To me, uh, women are the strongest thing on the planet because that's all I know. That's the way I was raised. I saw women go above and beyond and hold it down and do the jobs that men are supposed to do. So, not having a dad there, and whether it was something that was, you know, something that's biological that's responsible for my situation, or if it was something that came by way of my environment, even still, I only saw women as, I didn't see men in a strong, positive light in my childhood. I never saw that. So, because of that, I have always had a respect for them that I can't begin to measure, okay? And when I went into the gay culture, their view on women,
That's what a lot of people say.
their view on women just immediately, I was not there long. I said, wait a minute. None of this makes any sense. The woman is the most powerful thing on the planet. How can they have all these issues without women? We would not be. There are so many things that would not be without women. Unfortunately, and even today, we're in a place where mainly women are running the world. Our brothers are dropping the ball, and they're not doing anything that. They're not giving the women the ability to just be a woman and, be nurtured and taken care of and supported by a man. And for me personally, I identify with both because, it's necessary. I have to be a positive image of a man for my own sons. I'm like this all the time, and my family, my children are familiar with everything, but at the same time, I don't just put on that suit and tie to be professional in business. I put that on for my sons so that they know that, I'm dad, and it's okay to be whoever you're going to be, but some things you have to do to make sure you are acknowledged in the world, at least somewhat of what you're looking for. You're never going to be accepted all the way, but some things you've got to follow the rules, so to speak. It's okay to be an innovator, to maybe add on to whatever that is, but this is what you have to do. You've got to follow the rules. You've got to do what's right. And I mean, when I was, one of the things I dealt with, when I had that that brought me to that epiphany, that I'm non-binary, is I had issues, I believe, with the masculine side of myself, ashamed. I thought I was ashamed early on, like, oh, this is masculine, I've got hair, and, why can't I be a little more curvy here? Or, why is the hair growing on my face so fast, And when I started to have children, that was one of the things that helped me. I learned to love and embrace that part of myself. I love being able, despite everything, being able to be a proud, strong man. That's a great thing. Even though there are two sides, I embrace that just as much as the feminine, and once I started to make positive moves in my life, and I began to make connections and accumulate a little bit of power. I felt responsible to project the most positive image I could in whatever light I was showing. If I came out the house as a man or a woman, I'm going to come out the best I can. With either one of those equations, I'm going to be the best I can be at that, because I have an obligation, to do what's right for my own people, because I've got people looking at me. They're looking at me for direction and inspiration, and I have a duty. That's my biggest duty. I've got to take care of myself and my bills and my family, but I think that is my bigger duty. They're going to see me doing all those things anyway, but my children and my loved ones and my people need to see me proud of who I am. There are other people who are like me, and if I do the best that I can, then maybe people that are coming behind me who may potentially be living in this same type of situation, they don't have to experience all of the adversities that I did. It's not a smooth ride in the park, but like you said, what is?
Is it so I think that for a lot of people who are not a part of that wide community, that has too many letters for me to remember currently, but a part of that community, is it the issue? I think for a lot of people that I've talked to is them trying to understand the choice, or, and this is back to what I was asking before, understand people. It's interesting. People just want to know. People are nosy, first of all, obviously. And so the first thing people want to know is it biological or is it a choice, right? Which to me kind of matters, but kind of
I think that's unique to the situation, the individual.
Agreed.
Because it could easily be biological, but it could be due to the environment, maybe even trauma.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things in there, but that is not everybody's situation.
Agreed.
Everyone is not born gay.
Uh-huh.
There are a great many who are born gay, but everyone's not born gay. There are people who've been abused, and prior to puberty, experiencing that kind of trauma, kind of does something to the human mind and body, and it kind of messes up the programming, and a man could end up, involved in some, demonstrating some behaviors that results in homosexuality, because that's all he knew. That was he was predisposed to sex that way. It wasn't sex, but the mind doesn't understand that in the body, and that's where that comes from. That's one of the situations. Then I think others are just born that way. I wasn't abused, not sexually, but I recall being very young, long before that conversation, that argument I heard my aunt and uncle, my mom and my uncle having. I remember having thoughts and feelings, years before that, and I was a baby then. So I mean that was something that was inside of me when I made it here, but that's not everybody's story.
Yeah.
And I understand that that's not black and white.
Yeah.
So
So you, the kind of how the conversation began was you talking about how when you went to the gay community in Baltimore, um, you didn't feel accepted.
at all.
You didn't feel connected,
Right.
right? So and that's very interesting to me, because it seems like, right, if we have a spectrum, right, and every new orientation that people sort of discover is a deviation from the previous one, right? So if you have, right, for most of human to for most of the human race, you have heterosexuality, right? Then you have, in terms of what people are used to, then you have maybe gayness in terms of what people are used to of being gay, homosexuality, and then you have non-binary and trans, etc. In terms of people, lesbianism, etc. Everything that goes into that as deviations from the norm in terms of what people are used to. There seems to me that there is a pain process in terms of acceptance from one deviation to the other. In the sense of, it's hard for some straight people, to accept someone who's gay. Sometimes it's harder for that same straight person to accept someone who is non-binary, trans, etc. And interestingly enough, or straight, it's hard for a gay person, it seems through your experience, to accept someone who is non-binary or trans. I've definitely talked to trans people who experience similar things as you in terms of not being accepted, and vice versa. So there's this weird thing.
It's very strange.
Where if you're not a part of the group or a group or exhibit behavior that is similar to me, I might go like this. Even if I've experienced stuff in my life, you would think that I would be more accepting because I experienced being an outsider, being on the outside. But there is something about, and I would hate for it to be inherent, but it feels inherent because it just seems to keep happening, about humans, to where it's like the idea of, once you used to be bullied, and then once you're on the end, you become the bully, right? The popular girl is making fun of this girl, and then she's now becomes popular. She ends up making fun of the people that used to be her friends on the outside. And just as you're talking and saying your experience, I personally don't just see it there. I see it everywhere. Literally everywhere, in every facet of people who used to be poor and get a little bit of wealth now look down on poor people. So there's this thing that humans do where once we now enter a new group or new class or new position in life, we try to look down on or separate ourselves from or create a divide.
Well, I don't think it's really looking down. I think that is trying to be safe, if you will. It's interpreted as looking down. But the reality is, if you have gone certain places or you're going, other people likely will not fit in that situation or equation. I can't bring a horse into somebody's living room. That's just not.
It's a really good analogy. Yeah.
Right.
It
doesn't make sense. How am I going to get a horse in this building? And if I do, then how much chaos and damage is that horse going to create? And all it's doing is just walking in with me. But I'm responsible for that.
So do you think that? So what I'm hearing, do you think that there's this idea of, right, one nation, right, a melting pot, etc., and people, whatever, and people have this idea of what that looks like, which is the circle, everybody holding hands. I'm me. The person next to me is something else. The person next to that person is a giraffe. The next person is whatever, and whoever. And we all have to get along and agree in order for that. And I agree with you. You're shaking your head. No, I think it's unrealistic. But I think that is what is the frustration between people have this idea of what society and accepting society should look like, or not should, but what they, whatever, I don't know where that comes from, but there's this idea that may come from movies or whatever of, oh, well, in order for us to be loving and whatever, we have to do this. Where the conversation we're having, the conversation I had before, was centered around mutual respect and mutual, just the ability to have a conversation or to listen or to work on a project or to be in the same building or to whatever that thing is. Doesn't mean I'm I'm your best friend. Doesn't mean we go play golf together. Doesn't mean we do any of those things. It just means that I have decided that I'm going to treat you with a certain level of humanity that is predetermined, that says that you don't feel like you are less just because of whatever. And I'm a firm believer in that. Like, I'm a firm believer in treating people with respect and with humanity regardless. And I've seen people who are liberal treat people who are conservative like they're nothing, and vice versa. And I think, like you're saying, everyone can be guilty of this feeling of wanting to be safe. And so it's like, you don't have to, we don't have to you don't have to fit everywhere. People don't have to fit everywhere. I don't fit everywhere. I don't want to work certain places. I don't fit in certain places. I can't, certain chairs literally don't fit me. I can't sit in a little kid chair. I got a funny picture of me sitting at, when I was in school, I went to a laundromat and there was a little kid's, like, little kid's play table with the oven or whatever. And I sat down and I looked crazy, right? I'm just giant person sitting in this tiny little thing, and I'm uncomfortable. And I don't even like it. And some people feel like they have to force themselves to like something just because they want to be a part of whatever's going on. Sometimes you got to go and make your own table or go somewhere else and sit at a different table. And people learn that at different stages in life. But I think it really does go back to what you're saying in terms of starting off with that respect that people have. So how was it having children and raising them, and were there any moments of misunderstanding by the part of other kids, other people's parents? Like, did you ever have to confront, because from what you said, your mom was accepting of you, etc., but were there any of those situations? I would guess that there are. But if there were there some situations in which it wasn't so easy for your kids, potentially? I don't know.
Not just yet.
Okay.
Not just yet. Okay. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah.
But there have been quite a few moments where I'm uncomfortable myself, and I'm sitting back and I'm thinking and I'm judging myself like, what am I doing to my sons? What am I doing to them? They've got to be confused by me. But I realize you can't get blood from a rock. I can only be who I am. And based on what I've seen in some of my life's experiences, I'm a great dad. So regardless of what's going on and, with my sexuality and my appearance, I go above and beyond to teach my children good value, morals and principles, and I teach them to be driven and respectable and to do whatever it is that makes you happy in your own personal life. But you have a duty to be respectful in this world and conduct yourself accordingly, so that those are the people and the energy that you attract. But to this moment, no, I haven't had a situation with parents or bullying kids in schools. But, I pick myself apart. I'm like, God, I'm sitting here and I've got abroad. How the hell am I going to explain this to my son? But I don't have to explain that to my son. My son just has to see me go out there and be productive, to make it happen, to go out there and make positive things happen in the world, because people are always going to have something to say regardless. So who am I to take the fact that it's just what it is. I know it's unconventional, but why am I going to make my bra a subject when there's the subject of his skin or maybe his hair and all of these other things that he's encountering in school anyway? So who am I to say, or anyone else, that this is greater than that? It's happening anyway. If I wore my suit and tie every day, my son might potentially still be teased and bullied. He lives in Harford County. There are a lot of people who are not our color. So, that's coming anyway. But I think I'm blessed. I'm alive in a good time. It's a good time to be alive. The world has changed. It's not what it was for gay people or people of different sexual preferences. The world is not what it was in the 70s and 80s and 90s when I was living. Now it's, people are in their own way. Yeah. The world has already made it's made room for our people. Whether people want to agree with it or not, it's happening. You walk into Walmart, and so why am I going to make this an issue when I've got a company and it's a completely professional business as major as Walmart, and you walk in, or maybe a casino, and there's a male bathroom, female bathroom, and there's a family bathroom. It's unsaid, but the family bathroom is for me. The world has already accepted it, truly. It's not the world that has issues with sexuality. It's us. We're in our own way with that. And I find that if I create issues, if I share my own intimate concerns about what I may or may not be doing with my children, that is the only time it becomes an issue for them. That's what makes it the monster I worry about it being. So I haven't had that, and things are great. And I know it would seem to be rather complicated to some people, but really it's not. My family life is just like yours. I want to feed my wife and kids. I do. I want them to love me. I want them to respect me. I want them to trust in the fact that I'll do that. I want my kids, my sons, to go out there, and I want them to be strong, proud men. And the reason I'm happy, I say I'm happy, it's a good time to be alive, is because I'm in a place where if that's what I want to do, if I want to wear a dress, I can wear a dress and I can still make that happen.
So it's interesting because a lot of what I assume to be people's fear or nervousness is not fear. Well, maybe fear. It's whatever. What I think, because what I'm hearing you is that a lot of people think that. I'll give you my own personal experience. I have a cousin who, when this cousin was about 2 years old, this cousin's mom said to me and some other members of my family, he was 2 and he was just a normal young kid, whatever, doing whatever he saw, and the mother said, "Oh," the mother didn't didn't like my family and knew certain things about my family, and felt a certain way and would do anything that they could to spite my family, for various reasons, for drama, internal drama between her and the father. And so she said one time, I was at the hospital, I remember her saying, so my younger cousin he used to curse. He was 2 years old. He used to curse, like I said. He'd do anything his mother did. She cursed horrible.
Well, clearly, if he's 2 years old, we know how that happened.
Horrible. And at one point, and my aunt would try to correct him in whatever way that she could. But at the end of the day, it's not her son. She's trying to do what she can. So there's one situation where my cousin, as a 2-year-old, had a purse on, and my aunt just didn't say, "You don't wear no purse." Just was like, "Hey, I'm gonna take this purse. This is for girls. This is for guys." And this was maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. It was a while ago. And the mother of the child said, "Oh, I'm gonna make sure that he becomes gay." It's the same face we all made. I'm gonna make sure that he becomes gay. I'm gonna make sure that he acts just like me. Acts da 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 da. So for the next couple years, this child became more and more feminine, and it was definitely a type of abuse. Absolutely, and that's an extreme case of craziness. But what I think some people fear, or what's
That's extreme abuse. Extreme. You know, I'm almost afraid to think about what she did to make that happen. You know, I mean.
So what people assume, what some heterosexual people that I've talked to assume, that not that is happening, but assume that somehow if someone's parent is gay, this is like the classic thing, then they're gonna become gay, or that their parent is gonna try to make them gay, even if they're not maybe inherently gay, even if they might be inherently heterosexual. And what I'm hearing from you is that you want to encourage your sons to be whatever it is that they feel as though they are. And that is something that I don't, it could be I don't talk to enough non-binary or gay people to know. But what I've heard from a lot of people who consider, like, who are allies and who speak on behalf, I think, of the gay community, but they themselves may not be gay, tend to, it's like somebody who's liberal tends to push their ideals on their children, and that child have conservative ideals or may have moderate ideals or whatever. And I think that just hearing you say that is an eye-opener for me personally, because that's something that, through virtue of friends or what other people told you, that I have internalized, in the sense of, you know, you're going to a person who is gay or non-binary or whatever is going to push that lifestyle onto the child, regardless of if the child just wants to be heterosexual or the child wants to be whatever. So, and I guess that's the same idea of how you felt when you went to the gay community and how they ousted you. So I guess.
Oh yeah, I was a black sheep to them.
Yeah.
You know, I was strange because, you know, there were people. They had these events, kind of like pageants, and you know, I just went there and you know, just to experience it. You know, I love to be exposed to new things. You know, I don't know how, but I'm predisposed to being extremely diverse. So I like to be in the know. I want to experience that I don't want to be told, especially something that's supposed to be who or what or where I come from. So I went and I saw how things operated. You know, they had these shows and there was so much time and energy and money put into these events. I mean, you would see people wearing maybe $3,000 and $4,000 gowns, but at the same time, they were sleeping on someone's couch or maybe writing a bad check or didn't, you know, however to survive. Potentially not even having money to pay for the bus to get to that pageant. But those were the same people who were standing in front of me telling me, well, you're less than and you're nothing and you're nobody. I don't belong, like I'm not good enough, because they don't all recognize me as someone who's doing something big because I'm not doing what they're doing. But I was smart enough to see all of this is unreal. This is not reality. You know, I went in there with that. I'm like, well, what about the real world? You know, don't you need a job? How are you going to pay for that without a job? Or, well, if you win this show and they give you a trophy, the trophy is worth $20 and somebody probably used the credit card to steal a damn trophy. So what is the point? My thing was, you're putting all of this energy into nothing. Why don't you all find something positive that is going to advance you? A positive place to put this energy in. And they were, who is this again? Like, oh, like I'm, what was the expression? I'm late. I'm a not, like,
That's interesting.
wow. But fortunately, I was strong enough to be aware and to be in the know. Like, this is crazy, but imagine what so many other people, the effect that it had on them, being ousted by their own families or thrown out into the world of fame for themselves. They're supposed to go to this culture to embrace them, and then essentially they are doing the same thing. It's the same thing. As a matter of fact, it's worse, because I've given up my life and my family, or so everybody thinks, for this culture, and the culture does not have my back. As a matter of fact, the culture is about to just grind me into the dirt. And I saw all of that as a whole, like literally, well, not literally, but as a metaphor, I saw all of that in 5 minutes, and I turned and I ran away. I said, okay, well, this is not me right here. I don't want to absorb any of this stuff. And, after my experience with that, I went out into the world making my own way. Maybe I can potentially have people living the way I live, just being comfortable with you and not seeking acceptance from someone or somebody else's, because likely you're not going to get that. When you accept yourself, it almost puts people in a place where you're confident. They have to accept you, or if not, they're sitting there and they're the ones that are uncomfortable, especially if you're not going to go anywhere. I'm going to be here and I'm fine with me, So if you've got issues with that, clearly it's with you. And I'm going to let you have that. And that's just the way that ball bounces with me now.
I appreciate you. Great to talk to you. All right.